Hi Crafty Friends, this is Jen from Katahdin Crafts, and welcome to Lawn Fawn Fans Summer YouTube Hop. Our summer hop is being sponsored by Not Too Shabby. A $25 gift certificate is available to win. Not Too Shabby is owned by Jamie, and her shop has original content as well as other brands such as Lawn Fawn. She also has some fabulous digital images that she's been increasing inventory in this summer. I definitely recommend everybody go check it out. I will have the link to Not Too Shabby below. Today's card, I used several of Lawn Fawn's summer release products. The stamp set I used was Crazy Antics, and also I used their new Slimline dies, one being the Slimline Stitched Hillside Borders, and then the large Slimlines with sliders. So I have made a slider card. And I'm also giving away a stamp set, a Lawn Fawn stamp set and coordinating dies on my channel to anybody that likes, subscribes, and comments below. Okay, a little disclaimer starting this card. I kept most of it pretty sped up. I've been trying not to speed up as much, but there's a lot of content and a lot of layers in this card that I wanted to show you. The first thing I did was use the largest frame from the Slimline die with the sliders. I have a Gemini Junior, so it doesn't fit the whole entire die in the machine. So what I did is I did one pass and then I stopped right in the middle and backed that up, and then I did another pass on the other side. You're going to see me do this a lot with this card because I'm using a lot of dies that aren't meant necessarily for Slimline. So in this one I used the Slimline Hillside borders that were new from Lawn Fawn, which makes it super easy to cut out a Slimline. And then I also used the slider, and I made sure that there was enough room in order to put a foam adhesive background on that to give it some dimension. And now I'm using Meadow Borders in order to get a grassy section. And so you can see that I piece those together. I kind of just butt the two up together. I cut one section and then I add the other one, and then again I go back and forth. This makes it the length I need and makes it seamless. And also, as you notice, that I cut several of the frames with the largest frame border in order to be able to make sure I still had the stitching on the edge and eventually on the end or the bottom, you can see. And that's when I line up the straight flower border. And you can see that there's going to actually be two tulips in a row, and that kind of irritated me at first, but in the end result I end up snipping it anyway. But I wanted you to see how I could make that seamless, where you just line up those two, the border on top of the other one, and it can cut a whole full line. And now I'm also doing the same thing with their tree line border, the Stitch Hillside. It's actually called the Stitch Hillside border. And this was pretty simple. Once you make through that first pass, and then you can look at it and then play around with the other die, and you can generally make it work. See how it just fits right in there, and then you just scooch everything over and you tape it down with the purple tape, and there you go. You can get one seamless large border used for a slimline card. The reason behind me stopping and then backing up in reverse with my Gemini machine is oftentimes I want to make sure that I'm supporting the die and that it won't bend when it comes out the end without the plate underneath it. In this case, I didn't want to crinkle up the trees either by putting it through the machine without it being sandwiched. Now, this was the trickiest part of my card, and I didn't show you all the different times that I tried to make this cut work. I broke it down to a couple. One of them, you'll see that it did not work, but I wanted you to see my struggles and I wanted you to learn from them with me, so it'll be easier for you. So I thought, because this fit a little bit different, I had to go over an area that had already been cut, but it didn't exactly match up. So I thought, well, a solution could be to cover the part that I did not want to cut with some purple tape. So I added layers upon layers of the purple tape, and I got that ready to go through. And it does actually, if you look, the curve does work well with that. I can get that right into that section. But yeah, no, that did not work in my favor. What happened was that it just cut right through the paper where I didn't want it to cut. And I didn't know if I was going to have anything to cover up those type of boo-boos when I was layering my cards. So I went ahead and tried a different method. So this was one of the mats that goes with the Gemini. I've never actually used it. It's for embossing with die cuts. So I thought, well, this could perhaps work. So I tried one layer and that didn't work. It still cut through. So then I went ahead and added the second layer. I also removed my metal shim and didn't have that extra pressure, and yay, it actually finally worked. I had a little bit, I'm showing you right there, a little bit of extra stitching on that, but I knew I could cover that up if I needed to, so that wasn't a big deal. So now I'm using my fancy schmancy cloud stencil, one that I have cut myself from Lawn Fawn stitched clouds, and I just keep this in my drawer, and it is my go-to. I do need to probably invest in some of their cool stencils, which I do want, but I keep on forgetting to order them, and you know what? This is working, and I like the way it looks, and they have 3 different sizes, and it's working for me. So I'm doing a cloud border with Distress Oxide and Tumbled Glass. That is my go-to for my skies. It's what I tend to always use. Everybody gets their little bit of a favorite, and that is definitely my favorite. And now I'm going to use Mowed Grass, or actually it's Mowed Lawn, sorry, and the Distress Oxide inks as well. And I'm changing out my blending brush here to the Life Changing Blender brush set from Picket Fence Studios. I wanted to give that a shot. The round blender wasn't really working for me today. Not sure why, but that's just, you know, I might have been using a heavy hand or something just wasn't working, so I wasn't getting the blend like I wanted. This is a summer scene, so I wanted to have a lot of green and lushness in the setting. It was kind of a challenge to make sure that I had a contrast with all the greens, and I definitely used a lot of greens, and I think that I reached it. So here I'm using pine needles on the tips of the mountains to make them look a little bit darker, and then it fades down to that mowed lawn look. And I'm just testing it out as I go. And for the next layer, I'm going to mask off the trees because I'm going to use Copic markers to do the trunks on those. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't blend them when I was using um, my Distress Oxide ink. So I went ahead and just put some purple tape and covered those. And now for another layer of green, I'm going with a lighter one, so I'm kind of going lighter as I go down. And this is Twisted Citron. So I haven't used these brushes a whole lot. I've had them for a while, but I always go back to my Ranger or my scrapbook.com blending brushes with the domes or the roundness. So one thing that I'm finding in this is that it definitely keeps the ink. You're supposed to use, I think, each one for a ink family. So like your greens, go with the greens. And maybe because this one is so much lighter that I definitely found that it had some of that pine needle still in there, which it kind of gave it that little bit more, you know, it's not so straightforward of a look, which isn't too bad. But I kept on trying to rub it off on my microfiber cloth, and I wasn't getting it all off, as you can see. But I don't know, if anybody has any tips on that, I'd love to hear them. With that, I used the same thing, the Twisted Citron, and I was trying to make them match because you can see that back panel through the slider. And then I'm using Lucky Clover on my grass and a little bit more pine needle. I just keep on trying to make it a little bit darker, make that contrast work. See what I'm saying with green upon green upon green. But you know, if you were in having a picnic in the fields in summer, that's what you would see. And maybe a little bit of yellow in the background with some hay or something, you know, with like one of the fields that are getting ready to be mowed. And then I went ahead and spritzed those pieces, those panels, with just plain water. That reacts the ink, the oxide ink, and it gets that nice splattered look so it's not so solid, and it just gives it a little bit more interest. So now I'm using Copic markers, again, just trying to get a different shade of green going on. So I started with my YG21, which is, again, it's quite close to that Twisted Citron, but a little bit different. And then I just topped that with a little YG25. And now for my stems, I'm using G07, just going right down the line and filling those all in, and then just putting a little bit of a mark on the leaves with a little bit of a darker shade. So I believe I'm using G67 here. I don't know, I'm sorry that I didn't put that cap down for you. Sometimes I get into the groove and I forget to put the caps down. And now I wanted to do some bright colors on those flowers. So on the regular flowers, not the tulips, I'm using a V12. So I did some purple shading with that. And I'm just putting some dots. I'm just adding a little bit to the flowers. You can do different textures or different patterns, whatever you would like. I put a little V15 there and then just a little V25 for even more dimension. Nothing fancy, just some dots. And I did that with all the purple flowers. And then I'm just going back and just evening it out and smoothing it out with the V12 again. And now for the tulips, I'm starting with R24 and just going down that whole line with that. And then I'm going to add a little bit of R27 just for a little bit of shadowing. And then just a little bit more of the R29. Again, just trying to achieve a little bit of dimension, but keeping it pretty simple. And then I'm just going to top that back over again with the R24 to just make it smooth. So nothing too fancy on that. And then now it's time to check out all my layers to see if it's all working. And it is. So we're going to Copic color the trees, just the trunks. I realized that I didn't really need to do the branches because they're going to all be covered. So I'm using E23 for the bottom, and then I'm going to shadow that a little bit with the E25, and then go back again with the E23. Again, I'm just keeping it pretty simple coloring on these sections. Okay, next up is the actual coloring of all the images. Now I'm going to make this into super speed mode because this video is turning out to be quite long. It's just all those layers that I had going on, and I really just couldn't stop myself. I wanted to see what I could do with the A2 size die cuts, making them into a slimline. It was kind of a challenge that I challenged myself, and I really liked the way it turned out. Yeah, so I didn't focus too much on the coloring today for you. If I slowed it down, you would have been here forever, and there's so much talent to be hopping along to that I did not want to take everybody's time. You can see all the colors that I used right on the screen, and I'm doing my normal typical three-tone different Copic coloring. Start with the lighter, then I go in with the medium and then the dark, and then I blend it all out with the light again. So very simple, basic Copic coloring. If anybody ever had any questions about the styles that I do when I speed up the videos like this, if you need anything or have any questions, just shout out to me and I will definitely help you with that. And I did all the ants the same way, so I'm just going to show you a couple of them, and then by magic they're all going to be colored in. Poof. And then I'm working on the little snacks that those cute little mice brought to the picnic. And just this, I'm going to take this opportunity to shout out to Carrie Rhodes. She has again hosted this hop. We have a group of super talented ladies that all love Lawn Fawn, because who doesn't love Lawn Fawn, right? So Carrie founded this group of like-minded stampers who have all come together to share our passion for Lawn Fawn and support one another, and hopefully inspire all of you watching and hopping along. Thanks again, Carrie, for inviting me to this wonderful group. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to this. What a great group of ladies. I do love to chit chat with everybody in our little group, so it has definitely been fun. So now I'm digging into some of my old Lawn Fawn products. I'm going to use Trees in the Forest for all their tops of the trees and some of their trunks, and the Four Squares backdrop portrait for just their sun, or for the sun in that set. And then I also cut another frame out and then just used the Slimline Stitched Hill for the corner, so I had a spot in order to lay the picnic. And now I wanted to remove my card is really bulky as it is, so I wanted to remove some of that extra bulk that wasn't needed. So I just measured that out to make sure that it would fit still, and I just trimmed off some of that bottom of both of these layers just to eliminate a little bit more of that weight. And then I'm just going to adhere all this together. So I'm starting to see my card come together, which is super fun. And then I just had to add a little bit more green, and so I went with a darker one for this. And I just used the pine needles for that little corner, and I spritzed it again to get some more of that little texture. And I didn't want the picnic basket to have that little white section still. I used my scan and cut for all my images, and it doesn't take out those little negative, or if it does, I don't know how to make that work. So you can see here I didn't want those little grass and the flowers, the extra flowers, to peek out behind the little corner. So I went ahead and just marked that and trimmed it. And here I'm using a flower that was from the set Built for You. And I just randomly put some of those flowers on some of the trees. Not all of them. I wanted to keep a little variety. Um, and I also use the Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink for all of my images. I don't think I noted that earlier. And that's a Copic friendly ink that I quite often use. And now this is something that I've had in my stash for a while, but I have not used. And it's a Maloto? Well, I may not be saying that correctly, but it's a liquid mask. And so now I'm going over those flowers because what I wanted to do is mask that so I could color over it and still have the flowers come out as a different color instead of cutting those all separately and adding them to the trees. So I'm letting that mask set up and I'm going ahead and coloring these trees in a different texture and a different look. So just some green on top of green and I did little dots and maybe I should have gone and blended that back out. The texture might have been just fine without blending that back out, but I did, so I went with it. Just, whatever your personal preference is. And now I'm doing in that sun and some yellows. Y17 and Y18. I really like that rich color of the Y17. And now I'm starting to place together my slider. So I cut a strip of scrap cardstock and I used my eye to measure it and just measured what I needed with a little bit sticking out to be able to pull that slider back and forth in the chamber. You could see that I started to place down some of the foam tape and that helped calculate what I needed for that size. And then I just trimmed it to about a ½ inch wide. And now it's time to go back to those tree tops that had the masking on them. I'm going to use G12 to just cover that one, or cover these three. I did 3 matching on these and then 3 matching on those darker ones and then just 2 for the front ones. I'm considering those like little bushes. And I'm not really worried overly about shading with this card, so I'm just going back over that with a G14 to darken it. And yeah, I'm shading and it's kind of it's flat, but that's okay. I'm okay with that look for this. And now I'm going to use YG21 for a brighter bush. And then once I remove the mask, I'm going to use a rubber eraser to remove the masks. And then I'm going to fill in the flowers with light pink and light purple. And now I'm just adding a little bit of texture to those bushes, just for a little interest. Something a little bit different to break up some of the green. And now I'm going to start assembling the Slimline, or the slider. And so I used a powder tool in order to go around the edges of the foam tape before I remove the tape of the backing. And that just helps so the slider will actually slide without getting stuck on the edges of the sticky. And then I made sure that I also pop dotted or foam dotted those bushes up to give it some support. And as you can see, now I'm just applying all the foam, and this is very layered. We had to pop up the grass as well in order to be able to get the ants to be able to slide behind the grass, so I had to have a little bit of a layer on that as well. And now I'm going to adhere that to the bottom, just measuring it up and making sure that that stitch part goes right on the edge so it's seamless. And put the corner and do the same thing. When I tested my slider strip behind the grass and the flowers, I didn't like the color that it ended up being. So I went ahead and I lightened that back up with a little bit more Distress Oxide ink and just put it right on top of that, and it worked out okay. And that matched a little bit better to the background. Sorry, you hear Suki barking at Miss Petunia, our pig. She just came in from her walk. When I went to add the corner piece on, I realized that I put too much foam adhesive on there, that the grass and the flowers being popped already, I needed to remove some of that and just directly adhere that, and so it would be the same dimension. And now as you can see, I'm just working some of that grass up just gently so it has some space there for the ants. And I'm going to assemble the ants with whatever various food that you want to put on their backs. And then I was playing with that, tried the watermelon, and then I liked the way the cheese kind of looked in the basket. And yep, just adding those ants. And then when I got to that part, you can see that I had to tear it off because I realized that I should have put a double layer of foam adhesive on this section. I needed a bigger chamber. So I went ahead and peeled that gently off, and I knew all those marks on there wouldn't matter once I went and added that. And then I found when it was off that it was easier just to go ahead and pop dot those ants. Somebody gave me a tip on my last slider to use pop dots, actually foam dots, instead of using the foam tape to try to cut off an area, and that worked really well. And I just made sure that everything was placed the way I wanted it and adhered it all to the page or to the card panel. I added another little ant at the end. He already got victory and made it and is waiting for his little friends. And now the mice, I'm assembling their picnic area. The basket is just as big as they are, which I thought was cute. They must have had to use teamwork. And then I also had gone ahead and added my sentiment. I love your crazy antics. I used a stamp platform in order to do that. And then I thought, well, I need something about in between the little mice. So I just colored on a piece of scrap paper and I cut out a heart from an older set of Lawn Fawn as well. So I'm just going to put that right in between the little the little mice. Having a little glue issue right there. And I did start using my Lawn Fawn glue, but then discovered that I need to purchase more. It was empty, so I had to switch to another one, and I liked precision. I used a precision tip. And now I'm just going to cut with my corner rounder. And I realized that with just having the 1/2 inch strip that this didn't really work out well, as you can see in just a second. It was too small. So see, and then I went back and did this and then it did the same. So I just took a pair of snips and just rounded that myself. And then I cut from Lawn Fawn's push here set, I cut the pull here in half because it's just such a little area, and I just cut the pull, and I used the pull from the pull here. So I just snipped that in half and used it. And now I'm using the Lawn Fawn glitter pen to use some, or to add some sparkle and some shimmer to my card. And I just have to now adhere my card panel to my card base. And phew, that was a lot of steps. I appreciate everybody that stuck around and watched all these steps with me. I'm really super happy with the way that this card turned out. I was getting a little discouraged when I was trying those mountains at the beginning, but I figured it out. And see, it slides really nice. You just have to make sure you adjust the grass blades a little bit, but then it all works out. And you can see that I also definitely needed that double layer. So thank you so much again for stopping in. Thank you to Carrie for organizing this event. And thanks to all the other ladies in this hop. You guys are fantabulous, and I'm just so honored to be associated with any of you and all of you. And thanks to Jamie from Not Too Shabby for the $25 gift certificate that you can all win. So hop along, comment, like, and subscribe, please. And I will see you all again very soon. Happy crafting!